All right, hello and welcome into KBO Chats Live. I'm Sam Pasco alongside Erik Halterman, and we are breaking down all 5 games on the KBO slate tonight/tomorrow morning, depending on where you are joining us in the world. We are on Twitter today. We are streaming live on YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch, so be sure to comment and like no matter what platform. It helps us out. Do appreciate that. And be sure to check out rotowire.com/free KBO to follow along with all the stats and graphics we're going over today. Great site we're working on there. So be sure to check that out. Let's dive into the standings. Speaking of, Erik, looking at the Landers in first place still, but still a lot of parity. A lot of parity. 5 teams are 3 or fewer games back of first place. 7 teams with a positive run differential, and 8 teams have either 4, 5, or 6 wins in their last 10. So a lot of equal playing field right now in terms of the KBO action. What else are you seeing right now in these standings?
Yeah, again, I think it's similar to last week. There's a very clear divide between our 7 contenders and our 3 non-contenders. There's only, a 3-game gap between the Heroes and the Tigers. But if you sort by run differential over to the right, there's, it's 0.87 run gap between the Landers, who are at the back of the pack of the contenders, at least when you sort in that way, and the Eagles, who, good for them, they're 8th in run differential. Better than they were, I think, at almost any point last season. But it's quite clear, I think, already that the 5 playoff teams are going to come from among that group of 7. Too early to say who's going to lose out, but given how long the Landers and Lions have stuck with that group, I think you have to feel confident that they're going to at least stick in the fight for a while, if not necessarily end up as favorites.
Indeed, they are hanging in there right now. We do want to welcome in Barry, a long-time viewer here, tuning in. Let's move now into the daily lineups, into the first game of the evening, the Kia Tigers and the Hanwha Eagles matchup. The Eagles won game 1, but Kia won last night 5-3, so the series is split. Starting with Kia's pitcher, Jihyun Im. He a high ERA there, but, looking a little deeper, there's more. His ERA has decreased in each start he's made this year. Has gone 5 or more innings pitched in 6 straight outings, and 7 strikeouts with no walks in his last start against the KT Wiz. So some impressive stuff recently. What are you seeing from Im?
Yeah, there's definitely at least something here. Im was actually pretty good at the start of last season. One of the reasons I thought the Tigers might end up with some of the final wildcard spots is that they had a very deep rotation, and Im was part of that, but he fell off hard and finished with a ERA north of 5, which is what he's done almost all of the seasons of his career. Had some good ones, 5+ years ago, I believe. Even last year, though, despite that 5.15 ERA, he finished with a 19% strikeout rate and a 5.9% walk rate. So there was hope for at least something. He started out this year terribly, an 8.14 ERA over his first 5 starts. But like you said, much better lately, 1.96 ERA and an 0.98 whip over his last 3. So this isn't a completely new level for him. He didn't keep it up for much of last year. We'll see how much he keeps it up this year. If you factor in the good with the bad this year, his strikeout rate is down nearly 4 ticks, while his walk rate is up 2 percentage points. So even with those better outings, still not the most convincing. But there's at least something here, and he's got an easy matchup. So for fantasy purposes, I wouldn't hate taking a flyer on him despite some pretty poor season numbers.
Indeed, we'll talk about that weak Hanwha Eagles offense he's facing in a moment. But turning our attention to the opposing pitcher he's facing, Ryan Carpenter, a first-year player in the KBO. He's kind of been sneaky solid his last couple outings, heading into his last start at least. He allowed no more than 2 earned runs only once. He was lit up for 7 earned runs in his last start, but that was against the Landers, the league leading Landers, unfortunately. But he'd have 9 strikeouts and is averaging over 7.5 strikeouts per start over his last 3. So maybe pretty promising here.
Yeah, I've been actually quite happy with what I've seen from Carpenter all year. Didn't seem like the most exciting foreign pitcher signing, given that he was good but not dominant in Taiwan last year, which is generally considered to be a lower level, maybe low A to high A, whereas KBO is roughly double A. Given that Yeah, given that he was, merely good last year, I would have expected him to be one of the weaker foreign starters in the KBO this season. Hasn't been the case at all. Had a 1.69 ERA before getting roughed up in his last start. But as you mentioned, 9 strikeouts in that last start matched the season high, so it's not as if everything was terrible. And he's had the strikeouts all year, 25.8% strikeout rate, is well inside the top 10. 10.3% walk rate isn't great, although walks are up across the league this year, so it's not at all terrible. So I think you combine those with his performances, most starts, again, just that one blip with 4 runs 3 starts ago and 7 last time, but almost all of his starts, he's been very good. Looks like there's a chance he's, top third of the foreign starters in the league this year.
Yeah, he's got a pretty easy matchup tonight against the Kia Tigers, who rank just 9th in runs per game. The Eagles, not much better, even worse, 10th in runs per game. Pretty weak offenses, but the Eagles did score 9 runs in game 1, followed that up with only a 3-run performance, but still not too good. Not offenses that are that good. What are you thinking in terms of the lineup here?
Yeah, finally a bit of life from Ryan Healy for the Eagles, a 961 OPS over his last 12 games. He started very poorly. Looked like there was a chance he would bust out of the league by midseason, but I think he's doing well to keep his job. And you should always, again, give the benefit of the doubt to these guys with MLB experience because, if they've even come close to being a league average hitter, which Healy actually was, I believe he has a MLB WRC plus of 101, which means he's technically an above average hitter. Granted, his best seasons were a few years ago, but there's every reason to believe he would be at least middle of the pack among the KBO's foreign hitters, and he's back up there now. So that's something. I also like Yunwan Jung, the leadoff man for daily fantasy purposes. Gotta love a guy who walks 1 out of every 5 plate appearances despite not having any power. Still don't know why pitchers throw balls to him, but he's got a fantastic eye. Looks like he's 5'10". I wondered if I missed something and he was actually, 4'11" or something, but that's not it. He just has an excellent eye. Young, still quite young. I believe he's just 21 years old. So he's got the leadoff skills, 10 steals this season too. So he's definitely a real piece, and they've shown something from some of their guys in the heart of the order, but still lacking the depth. So even though they've got a couple guys that I recommend occasionally for fantasy purposes this season, which was barely true at all last year, still not exactly a scary unit.
All right, let's move now into the pick. In case you're just joining us, this is the first game we're breaking down. This is the Kia Tigers Hanwha Eagles matchup. The total set at 8.5 here, with the Eagles as the favorite, with Carpenter starting. Where are we going to go, Erik?
Yeah, I am going to go with the Eagles and the under. Jihyun Im has definitely shown something, and against a not great Eagles lineup, I think he's not going to give up a ton of runs. But Ryan Carpenter has been great in almost all of his starts. He's facing a very easy lineup. He'll also get the platoon advantage against some of the Tigers' top guys like Preston Tucker, who I guess still counts as a top guy, even though he has a 732 OPS on the season and just 3 homers. Jihyun Choi, too, is finally back from an eye injury, but was having a terrible year before that. So until the Tigers show something, I think Carpenter should be enough here, even with some decent performances recently from Jihyun Im.
All right, going with the Hanwha Eagles and the under 8.5 in this first matchup. Moving on, we got the Lotte Giants against the Kiwi Heroes. Lotte is going for the sweep here. And looking at the starting pitchers, you make me think it's 2020. This looks like a matchup of the 2 aces if this was last year between Straley and the Joker, Erik Jokic. Not the same guys they were last year. ERAs around 3 for both of them this year. Starting with Straley, he's been pretty elite, though, his past couple of starts. Just a 1.9 ERA in his last 23 innings pitched. He had a 12 strikeout performance in there as well. Just 9 walks against 31 strikeouts. Is Straley at that elite level? Do you consider him elite or just a really good pitcher?
Yeah, I mean, I think he showed enough last year that I was willing to forgive a few shaky starts this year, and he did have a few shaky starts early. But strong case as the best pitcher in the league last year. Jokic also had one, as did Raul Alcantara, who won the award as the top pitcher. Maybe you throw Aaron Brooks in there too, but these guys were firmly top 5. He had his shaky patch Straley end of April, late May. You see that 4 earned runs and 5 earned runs within a 3-start stretch. But since then, he's been completely fine. 190 ERA, 106 WHIP in his last 4 starts, 31 strikeouts in just 23 and 2/3 innings. So that's classic Straley performance, and those strikeouts in his recent starts have actually dragged his strikeout rate up to 26%, near match for his mark, 26.4% last year. So this is maybe not an exact copy of the Straley we got last year, but it's close enough that I'm pretty confident in him on any given night, even against a Heroes unit, which we should note is very lefty heavy.
All right, so a bounce back Straley from that late April, beginning of May rough stretch, facing off against Erik Jokic tonight of the Kiwi Heroes. Joker's been about 500 in his last 6 games, ERA at 3.5 over that stretch. A little concerning there. Maybe he's more of a wild card tonight because he can allow 11 hits or he can allow 3 hits. And we even saw him, he can get 8 strikeouts or he can get 2 strikeouts. He's pretty consistent in terms of walks, about 1 walk per game. But I really don't know what version we're going to get of him against the Lotte Giants tonight. Yeah,
pretty similar story for him, I would say, as for Straley. They both had a rough patch, similar time. I believe late April and early May, he had, I think, two out of 3, maybe 3 in a row, shaky-ish starts there. Or even, like you're saying, those 5 starts there with an ERA north of 5 from mid-April through early May. Worse than we expect from him for sure, but over his last 3, just a total of 3 earned runs, 142 ERA, 111 WHIP. And we've seen him have stretches like that for most of last season. Last year, he was the ERA king with a 2.14 ERA, and his 106 WHIP was in the top 5. Never a high strikeout guy. Even last year, his 18% strikeout rate was right around league average. So that does mean he's more susceptible to balls in play luck. And he gets those days where he gives up 9, 10, 11 hits at times. This year, strikeout rate has dropped about a tick to 16.9%. He's also walking 6% of opposing batters, which is great for everyone except for Erik Jokic, given that he was under 4% last year. So I would say on the whole, it's not quite a repeat of what he did last year. It was going to be tough for him to be that dominant again this season, given that he was, again, middle of the pack in strikeouts. I'm still pretty confident in him on a given night. Would be happy to use him tonight against a pretty unimpressive Giants lineup, even though, again, he's like Straley. He's facing a lot of guys who will get the platoon advantage against him. It's just not that intimidating of a group. So I think both of these starters, while not quite as reliable as they were last year, I'm still pretty confident.
Yeah, definitely still a lot of talent here in these starting pitchers. Speaking of the offenses they are facing off against tonight, Lotte, they're 7th in runs per game. Kiwi, they're out middle of the pack. They're 5th in runs per game. It's nothing too impressive there. Kiwi, they're 1-6 in their last 7 games. Lotte, they're 2-4-1. We finally saw our first tie, and the Lotte Giants were a part of that this year. So neither team's doing amazing right now. I know Jung-Ho Lee is a guy you look at for the Kiwi Heroes. Is he still someone you look at tonight against Straley because of the handedness matchup?
Generally, no. There's a few cases for it. One is that we've got strong pitching kind of everywhere tonight, so it's going to be hard to start no one against a good pitcher. You can still avoid ones as good as Straley, obviously. The other reason, unfortunately, this could be a rain-filled night. This game is taking place in a dome, so odds are no rain there at Gochuk Sky Dome unless something's gone very wrong. The other 4 games don't look like they're guaranteed cancellations, but real chance of rain in each and all of them. So if you can't check the weather at the last minute at 4 a.m. or wherever it is your local time, maybe a bet on somebody like Lee is fine. He's elite despite having just 1 homer all year. Jung-Ho Lee, he's got 18 doubles, which are 6 more than anyone else in the league. Obviously hitting 348, making a ton of contact. Most of their contact is into the gap, but he did hit 15 homers last year, so some of those doubles should turn into homers eventually. He's so good that he's usable everywhere. Really not the matchup I would like here, but again, given that rain elsewhere and the fact that there aren't really a lot of targetable pitchers tonight, I wouldn't completely rule him out.
All right, not completely out of the picture, but maybe not a great matchup against Straley. And we're looking here now at the pick for the Lotte Giants Kiwi Heroes matchup. 7.5 low total because of these pitchers. The Heroes are the favorites here. Where are we going to go?
Yeah, it's tough to go over with these pitchers, even though that their line is set quite low. So I think I have to go under. if it's an over, it's probably going to be because somebody messes up in the bullpen. So again, tough to be confident in a 7 or fewer. It's got to be 4-3, 5-2 or less. But I'm not comfortable saying either of these guys are going to give up a lot of runs. I will lean slightly heroes here. I like Straley more than I like Jokic, but the heroes have more bats that I like. They have gone colder lately, though. The heroes are 1-6 in their last 7 games, scoring less than 3 runs per game. So this one's very close to a push. Wouldn't object strongly if somebody sides with Straley. I think there's just a few more interesting bats on the hero side that they get the edge for me. But quite close to a 50-50.
All right, that's the pick for the Lotte Giants Kiwi Heroes game. We're going with the Heroes and the under 7.5 total runs. Now moving to the third game on the slate, we got the KT Wiz and the LG Twins matchup. The series is split. KT won game 1, LG won game 2. It is June, and kind of crazy to say, but we had Espana, a better ERA than Casey Kelly, kind of coming out of nowhere a little bit. Espana was knocked around by Kia in his last start, but before then, he had 7 straight starts with 1 or fewer earned runs. I mean, this is some impressive stuff. Maybe you're concerned with that walk rate, but you definitely got to respect that when that run prevention ability he somehow seems to have.
Yeah, I mean, Espana, he was most notable last year for being an innings eater, led the league in innings, but his 4.33 ERA in those innings wasn't anything special. This year, he's second in innings and could well lead the league in innings after this start. I think he only needs 5 or so innings to get there, passing Aaron Brooks. He's been a different guy this year and different in pretty notable ways. Last year, he struck out just 16.4% of opposing batters. That's up nearly 5 ticks, north of 21% this season. But he also had better control last year, just a 7.3% walk rate. It's up to 10.7 this season. You see he's walked at least 3 guys in each of his last 5 starts. I guess that'll probably hurt his ability to eat quite as many innings as he did last year, but I think the Wiz would be happy with this version of him if it sticks around. Suddenly he's looking like a top half foreign starter rather than one of the worst ones who you value only because of his ability to save your bullpen. So I'm liking him a lot more than I did last season, even coming off 1 shaky start here.
All right, so maybe a little bit more trust in him, showing a new version of him in another year with the KT Wiz. For Espana, looking at Casey Kelly, who he's facing off against on the LG Twins. By ERA, it is the worst season Kelly is having in the KBO. It's not saying much because when you look at his past ERAs, they've been around 3, 2.5 at most. 3.5 at most, 2.5 on the low end. He's kind of been inconsistent though recently. I mean, over his last 4, you have 2 starts where he's given up 5 or more earned runs, and then you have another 2 where he's given up 2 or fewer, and then you got sometimes he's given up hits 5 or more. He's got an 11-hit game in there, but then he's got a 2-hit game and following that up. So I really don't know, again, which version of Kelly's going to show up tonight against one of the best offenses in the league in the KT Wiz.
Yeah, one notable thing about Kelly is that his strikeout rate is down this season. It was 18.4% last year, which was nothing special, down to just 16.2% this season. And in all but one of his last 9 starts, which I guess is everything but his first start of the year, he had struck out no more than 4 guys. And then somehow in his lone exception, he struck out 10. And that just happened to be one of his worst starts because he gave up 5 runs in 5 innings. So not a lot of logic there, although notably from a fantasy perspective, given that he struck out 10 guys, it's actually one of his better outings. That seems like a fluke compared to what he's doing most of the time. You look at a lot of starts there where there's barely more strikeouts than walks, if more at all. So I'm pretty worried about what we're seeing here. His walk rate is also up on the year, nearly 4 ticks, 5.5% up to 9.3%. He's getting saved maybe by a 260 BABIP. I think that ERA could be a fair amount higher, given his pretty mediocre strikeout and walk numbers. But again, he is still getting it done a decent amount of the time. So I'm certainly not writing him off, but I am having a lot less faith in him than I did last year.
All right. That's what we're looking at for Espana and Kelly for these pitchers. Offensively, I mentioned the KT Wiz being one of the best in the league. They are second in runs per game on the year. LG on the opposite end of the spectrum, despite being contenders this year, they're just 8th in runs per game. They did score 6 or more in 2 of their last 3, so maybe they're heating up tonight. They're going to turn things around against Espana. What are we feeling like with this, with these lineups?
Yeah, I'm more interested actually in the whiz bats tonight. I had both Beko Gong and Zoilo Almonte on tonight's DFS cheat sheet. Gong has an 11-11 OPS that's tied with Yu Ji-young of the Dinos for the league lead. And he's done that without a ton of power, just a modest 7 homers. Clearly, his line's inflated by a 456 BABIP, but he's also striking out at a career low rate, just 12.3%. And, he's hammered the ball his whole career, so running a high BABIP shouldn't be a surprise. 5 of his 7 homers have come in his last 19 games. He has an OPS of 1257 over that stretch. So I think even against a guy like Casey Kelly, who has been good at times, I'm perfectly comfortable using him tonight. And look at that, 5 multi-hit games in his last 6. He's as hot as ever lately. You shouldn't be hitting 419 in early June, but he's hitting 419 in early June. It's too early to talk about a 400 season, but there's a very real chance he's still up near that level by the end of the month, and then it might be time to get talking. So as excited about him as ever.
Yeah, liking that there. Looking now at the pick, the KT Wiz LG Twins game. The total here is low because of these pitchers, just 7.5 projected runs. The Twins are the favorites here. Do we see maybe Gone going deep tonight? The multi-run game, maybe you'd lean towards the over here because of the pitchers and maybe their inconsistencies, or we like in the under?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the over. That is the same over-under as in that Giants-Heroes game, but I have more faith in both Straley and Jokic than in these two guys, I think. I guess in a sense, Despaigne has been the best out of all 4 of those this year, but he was also the worst by some margin last season and isn't coming off a great start. And Kelly, like I mentioned, just kind of all over the place, either being very hittable or striking out 10 guys and allowing a lot of runs. Just hasn't had many dominant all-around starts this season at all. I think the Wiz have too many good bats. So I am going to side with the Wiz. Although, again, Despaigne not 100% reliable, and the Twins do have a decent lineup, even if they started very slow this season. So not a complete lock, but definitely leaning that way.
All right, going with the over 7.5 runs in the KT Wiz in the Wiz Twins matchup. Moving over to our 4th game, the penultimate matchup here on the slate. We got the Samsung Lions against the SSG Landers. In case you're still new to the 2021 KBO season, the Landers used to be the Wyverns, and apparently that name change is working as they're the best team in the league. My Dinos are not the league leaders anymore this year. In terms of the series, though, it is split right now. Both teams have 1 game apiece. Both games have been 1-run games, so have been some close matchups here. Starting with the Lions pitcher, David Buchanan, we get the Buchanan experience tonight, as there was a 27-inning stretch where he had an ERA at .33. I mean, that's like Jacob deGrom level numbers. He's doing some amazing stuff in that stretch. But then he followed that up with a 26-inning stretch where he had an ERA at 4.5. Some pretty mediocre numbers there. So, I mean, both the strikeout and walk numbers are up from 2020. So maybe he's finding something, but I don't know which one we're going to get. And I'm looking forward to seeing which one we will with Buchanan.
Yeah, inconsistency was kind of a theme with him last year. He was nearly always very good, but I think he had even like a 10-run start on his resume last season and a couple other high ones. This year, nearly all of his starts have been good except for his first one and his most recent one. He really got knocked around by the Bears his last time out. 5 earned runs in 3 innings, more walks than strikeouts, which is a shame because he had a 2.10 ERA heading into that start and was making a case to be one of the best starters in the league. Last year had a 3.45 ERA, which is better than it looks given that he pitches for the Lions, who have the league's most hitter-friendly park. Notably, they're not playing there tonight. This year, it's just a very different guy. His strikeout rate is up by nearly 7 ticks. It was 16.6% last year, which didn't really back up his decent ERA. 23.4% this year to go along with a 7.8% walk rate. I mean, that's the dominance you want to see in terms of control of the zone. His FIP looks to be a near match for that ERA, 276. So I'm liking him a lot more than I did last season, especially when he doesn't have to pitch at home. So I think a little bit of nerves following a poor start his last time out, but on the whole, pretty impressed by everything he's done this year.
I like him Buchanan for the Lions. He's facing off against Won-Sik Oh of the Landers. Oh is a young guy who's shown some flashes, but ultimately has 16 walks in his last 19 innings pitched. He does have a 3-game hit by batter stretch, though. I feel like keeping track of that. Young guy born this century, 2001. What are we thinking about O against the Lions tonight?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his ERA in his last 3 outings, 126 looks pretty good, but that's, I think, about where the positives end, even over those 3 outings, which does include 1 relief appearance. He has a 153 whip, 10 strikeouts against just 10 walks. If you go back over his last 5 trips to the mound, in other words, all of May, he had more walks than strikeouts in 4 of his 5 appearances. Young guy with definitely some potential, but I wouldn't take his recent better ERA as a sign of much. I mean, his 4.95 ERA on the year is already unimpressive, and a 163 whip tells you that it could go a lot higher. He does have a pretty good strikeout rate, 20.7% on the year, but 13.8% walk rate just shows that he's not keeping it in the zone nearly enough. I think he's going to have to cut that considerably before I think he's at all an intimidating option.
Indeed, showing that potential for that nice ERA, but again, walks are a concern for the youngster. In terms of the offenses here, SSG is 4th in runs per game. Samsung is 6th, so pretty evenly matched. Like I said, they have been 1-run games so far this series. Game 1 was a 1-0 game, and then game 2 was an 8-7 game. So I'm not sure which way we can really say in terms of that total, which version we're going to get, especially with 2 wild card pitchers. But I imagine you have to lean towards that Landers lineup here, as they are 8-2 in their last 10 games.
I do like a decent amount of the Landers hitters. I think Jihyun Choi, the leadoff man, is an interesting one. I recommended him on today's cheat sheet. 10 steals on the season, but he's been doing his damage at the plate too lately. In his last 13 games, he's hitting .352, on base .438, scoring 18 runs in those 13 games. And this season, he's just a second-year guy, but he's shown very good control of the zone, 25 walks against just 18 strikeouts, which is a big step forward from last year where he struck out more than twice as often as he walked. So he definitely got the ideal leadoff skill set, gets on base a ton, and Landers have some good bats behind him. Jung Choi, Jihyun Choi, Shin-Soo Choo, Jamie Romack, even Yu Sung Han, the number 6 hitter, had some decent numbers last year. So a decent amount of depth for the Landers this season, especially now that Jihyun Choi, the second baseman, is back from an injury. So I like the leadoff guy as an inexpensive daily fantasy option because he should benefit from those guys. I'm not sure if I would have recommended him on a normal slate tonight, given that Buchanan is scary, but there's a lot of good hitters. So I think, or a lot of good pitchers, like I mentioned earlier. So you might have to use some guys against some of the better options, and I think he's one of the better cheap ones.
All right, that's what we're looking at in terms of fantasy. Moving our attention now to the pick for the Lions-Landers matchup here. Total set at 9.5 with the Lions as the favorites. Where are we going with the pick?
I am going to go Lions. Just too big of a gap between those two pitchers. I'm still going to keep the faith with David Buchanan, even though he's a bit shaky. I think he's a lot better than Won-Sik Oh. I like enough of the Lions hitters. So it's worth noting that the Lions have been without a number of their top guys the last couple games. I believe Jawook Koo, Heyman Park, and Min Ho Gong have all missed the last couple. That's definitely a blow, but I think even without them, there's enough there. I mean, especially Jose Perella. He's been dominant all year. Very, very good foreign hitter signing for them. 13 homers on the season. So I think there's still enough firepower in that Lions lineup, even with the absences makeup. I think they are a worse lineup than the Landers, but not by nearly as much, as Buchanan is a better pitcher than O is. Because I'm picking the Lions, I think I'm going to go under, because I think for the Lions to win, it's going to take a good start by David Buchanan, and I think he's going to do that.
All right, going under 9.5 and the Samsung Lions in this matchup. Moving over to our final game on the slate. We had Straley Joker as a flashback to 2020, and now we have the Bears Dinos matchup as a flashback to the championship of last year, the repeat. But right now the series is split a one apiece, and the Bears seem to have the edge here with the pitcher Jihyun Choi going for them. He's 5-0 on the season, 7 scoreless innings the last time he faced off against the Dinos this year, but has only crossed 5 strikeouts just once this year. What do we like with Choi against his potent Dinos lineup?
Yeah, I think we like a lot. I mean, he started last year as a reliever, but was a real find for the Bears. He entered the rotation, I think it was right after Chris Flexen, a broken foot or something that caused him to miss an extended period last season. Choi pitched well enough to keep the job the rest of the year and was a real stabilizing force for a Bears rotation that was the key weakness really throughout the season behind Flexen and Raul Alcantara last year. They really didn't have much until Choi stepped up. And he's repeated this year. I don't know if he's going to keep his ERA at 2.68 like it is this season. There might be some BABIP luck there, but an 18.1% strikeout rate combined with a 5.7% walk rate, that's exactly what you want, making him one of the better local starters in the league, I think. Not the longest track record, but this is basically what he did for a half to 2/3 of last season. And he's stayed at that level all year this year, so I think he's very much for real.
Yeah, liking Choi tonight. We got some Bears fans in the crowd tonight. Bears all day. Looking at the Dinos, though, they're no gimme here. But Song has been bad his last couple of starts. Bad, and I do mean bad, as he has 2 starts, 9 innings pitched, 16 earned runs. It makes it easy for us as he has an ERA of 16 then because of the math there. Maybe decent strikeout numbers. Maybe you like him because of that. 20 strikeouts in his last 19 innings pitched, but I can't imagine he's going to have an easy time against this Bears lineup.
Yeah, so his season divides neatly into 4 good starts and 2 bad ones, and that's on either side of an oblique injury. Can't help but wonder if he's still not at full strength. Over his first 4 starts, he had a 3.50 ERA with a strikeout rate, 9.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, so over a strikeout per inning, to put that another way. In his last 2, like you said, ERA of 16, a whip of an even 3, because that's 23 hits in those 9 innings plus 4 walks. And again, given that came right after an injury, there's reason to believe that he's not the same guy he was at the start of the year, which is too bad because he showed a lot last season, 3.70 ERA in a swingman role with an 18.3% strikeout rate, 9.9% walk rate. Wasn't anything special, but definitely looked like a real starter. He could get back to that level at any time once he's back to full health, but I'm going to need to see at least one good start from him, given how awful his last couple are. So I don't know if he's going to give up, twice as many runs as innings this time around, but I can't have any faith in him until he has at least one good start.
Yeah, 23 hits in his last 2 starts. I mean, that's Aaron Brooks numbers, bad Aaron Brooks. But yeah, not looking too good for Song. He's only averaging 48 pitches per game on the year, so can't imagine he'll go too deep tonight against the Bears offense that ranks 3rd in runs per game. They are down right now, just 4.3 runs per game over their last 6, so the Bears aren't super hot at the moment in terms of runs. The Dinos, they of course are 1st in the league in runs per game, and they won 9-5 in game 2 last night / this morning. What are we looking at in terms of the offense in this game?
Yeah, the Bears are without Kunwoo Park due to injury, but that has meant Intake Kim is a very interesting budget fantasy option. I believe he's just 2,800 on DraftKings tonight. Nothing really special there. Didn't ever have a regular role before this year, and he's 26 years old. But very solid numbers this season, and as a number 2 hitter who's hitting close to 300, getting on base a lot, and hitting in front of the likes of Jose Fernandez and Jaewon Kim. I definitely like him with the platoon advantage against someone like Song, who's been quite shaky recently. I think that's a good budget option there. I would recommend a Bears stack pretty much any of their top 5 guys, but especially the lefties. Dinos always have so many good hitters that you're pretty much fine starting even against a good starter like Jihyun Choi. This is not the ideal night for him, but as I mentioned several times tonight, there's a lot of good starters out there. And I don't think, given the quality of the rest of the arms on the slate, I don't think you need to completely avoid the Dinos against the Bears tonight.
All right, maybe considering that Bears stack as well. Moving now into the pick, the last game here. Total set at 11 runs in this Doosan NC matchup. That's the highest on the board. Jihyun Choi is good, but he could probably give up a couple. What are we making with that high total?
Yeah, that's too high for me. I don't think Jihyun Choi is going to give up enough. That's basically, you got to have either another complete implosion from Song, which could definitely happen, or an explosion from the Dinos against a good pitcher, which could definitely happen. But man, 11 in a game that has one starter who I really like in it, that's too high. I got to go under there, and I got to go with the Bears. The gap between the pitchers is just too large in this one. Again, Jihyun Choi has been at this level for, at this point, close to a full year. I think he really is one of the best local arms in the KBO. I think he has enough to hold the Dinos to a relatively low total, and I don't even think he'll have to be that good given Song's recent struggles.
All right, we're going with the under 11 runs in the Doosan NC matchup, favoring the Bears as well. Now we move over to the top 3 picks from the entire slate here, the top 3 from both totals and the team. Some good pitchers on the board. I'm curious to see where you're going to go, Erik. Top 3 picks on the entire slate.
Yeah, that's a lot of really tight ones. A lot of matchups where the slightly better pitcher is maybe with the slightly worse team, making this a tougher one than usual. I actually think I'm going to go Bears as the top pick, just because I think that's the biggest gap between the pitchers. Again, I just really do have pretty full faith in Jihyun Choi. I think he's a solid number 2-3 starter. And Myung-Gi Song hasn't looked like a number 7 starter recently. So that's some revenge for their Korean series loss. Who knows if they'll get back to a rematch this year, but I wouldn't be surprised. These are 2 very deep and talented teams, even if they're not quite at the 1 and 2 spots this season. So I'll go with that as the number 1. Number 2 is going to be Lions. Again, just going based on the gap in pitchers. David Buchanan, despite a shaky start his last time out, has been really good all year, and again with a strikeout rate up by roughly 7 percentage points from last season. I think he really is one of the better starters in the league last year, something I wasn't entirely sold on last season, whereas just shaky even when he's not giving up a ton of runs in his recent starts. His strikeout and walk numbers are very poor. So that's number 2. I think there's probably a big gap between that and the rest. So what should I go with as number 3 here? Man, if that Straley Jokic game was any higher than 7.5, I might have gone with the under there. I think I might go with Eagles. I think I like Ryan Carpenter.
Really? Okay.
Enough more than Gi-young Im, and the Tigers lineup has been as bad as the Eagles this season, and their best hitters are lefties. As you can tell from my tone here, not my most confident number 3 that I've ever done. You could maybe go with the under in that Dinos Bears game, although Myung-Gi Song is shaky enough that maybe 11 is correct. Maybe you go Wiz over Twins just because Casey Kelly's been shaky lately. I think that one's tight. I think the Giants Heroes game is too tight. There's a case that the Tigers game is tight, given that Gi-young Im has been better in his last couple starts. But Ryan Carpenter he's been for real for most of the season. And the lineups are both pretty bad. So I think a guy who's been as good as Carpenter is all year, I think that's enough to make that the number 3.
All right. Never thought I'd see the day where you picked the Eagles here, but a lot of good games, a lot of tight games on the slate today. Number 1 pick, the Doosan Bears. Number 2, Samsung Lions and the Hanwha Eagles at number 3. big gap there between the top 2 and the 3rd pick here. But going with that there, thank you guys for tuning in. Check out rotowire.com/free KBO for the full lineups and to do your own analysis as well. Check us out on Twitter at RotowireKBO. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.